Hi, welcome to another episode of I Mustache You Something. This is a very exciting episode where I'm making an exception to the rule that to be part of the group, you need to have done one before. So if you're one of the 7 people that has a consistent following and consistent watching of these episodes, you'll recognize Angie and you'll recognize Maggie, but you won't recognize Marsha. But fun fact, the 8th person, right? So if you're one of the 7 people that watches this, you have a fellow watcher in Marsha. So Marsha has almost been part of this from the beginning, not because she was on it, but because, you know, she's always like texting me like, oh, like, do you have another one? I'm like, listen, like, I already gave you a sneak peek on that one. Like, I can't, like, you know, send you all of them ahead of time. And she's like, why not? I'm like, okay, here's enough. So welcome, Marsha, to the world of I Mustache You Something. Are you excited to be here?
I'm excited to be here. My kids keep coming in, so hopefully they won't do that right now, but
So
thank you for having me and thank you for doing this because I love listening. You know I do. I listen, I look for them, I listen to them, I enjoy them, and I think you're having like a lot of really important conversations for our church. So thank you for what you do.
and thank you for your encouragement. Like I said, like, it's not a lot of people that are like excited about this. So most people are like, what, you're doing what? Like, why are you doing that? Or, you know, I haven't gotten any like negative feedback yet where it's like, what, you can't do this. Like, I'm waiting for that. I'm expecting that. And maybe this will be the episode that finally puts us on the blacklist. Which, you know, is inevitable. Like, you can't do anything good without being blacklisted somehow. Um, but yeah, if any of the kids come in, you know, by all means, like, let them say hello, and we can get some dirt on their father, who is of course none other than the wonderful, indomitable Father Daniel Habib, who has been on his own episode and a group episode. So he and you are close friends for a long time. So also with us is Maggie. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you, Mina. I'm happy.
So are we going to do that every time you have something to say?
No, I'm going to keep it unmuted the whole time so you can hear everything.
And Angie's here. Welcome back, Angie.
Thank you.
So I think we did a little bit of prep work here leading up to kind of outline.
Can I say we didn't talk about the fact that I was Maggie's Sunday school teacher and watched her grow up, and that she was my student in 3rd and 4th grade, and then again in 9th and 10th. So it is so exciting to be here with all of you, but really to have a conversation with Maggie, and we've been staying in touch.
You know what's funny? Maggie was my Sunday school teacher, like during summer camp. I can't remember exactly if you were my actual Sunday school teacher, but I remember you every summer. You'd be there in summer camp. So it's like full circle.
Full circle. I love it. Okay, sorry.
I love it too.
So Maggie, you should know that Marsha didn't want to do this. And I was like, you should do it. And she's like, no, I don't think so. Like, I like watching them. I like listening. I don't think I want to do it. And then I said, it's going to be with Maggie. She goes, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it. Absolutely. Yeah. Sign me up. I'm like, you don't want to talk to me, but you'll talk to Maggie. She's like, yeah, I feel comfortable with Maggie. I'm like,
I feel comfortable with Marsha too.
Okay. Like
and Angie, of course.
Like, I think if I had feelings, like if this concept of feelings like kind of existed, what about me? Like I was like, okay, great. Like, you'll do it. Yeah. Okay, fine. Like, I don't care why you'll do it. Like, as long as you're going to show up, I don't care. Like, oh, I hate you. I don't like you. I never want to talk to you. But Maggie, sure. Yeah. Okay.
It's something special.
Listen, I think it's great. Like, again, like at my core, I'm a pragmatist. Like, I don't care why you do the right thing. Just do the right thing. I don't care if you do the opposite of what I think is the good reason to do something, you did okay. Like you had how to benefit. Like at the end of the day, like you showed up. Okay, great. Okay.
Well,
So,
it's going to be fun. So yeah.
So I think one way to start out and to get into the topic is I have to tell you that I did try to get people from the generation older than mine, and I think that it works well with the group that we have because of the connections and the relationships. But if you asked me like what would I've really preferred, I would have preferred, instead of either Maggie or Marsha, to have somebody that's like 20, even 30 years older than me. And I want to ask you guys before I say like I think this is why. Is it just the limitation that I wasn't able to recruit? Because I the people that I recruited are not like shy people and they're like, oh no, these are like very outspoken people that will raise their hand and say things. And in this case, they're like, no, it's too public, it's too this. I'm like, what's the difference between this and like anything else that you say in public? So I didn't ask wallflowers. I asked influential, I would say powerful women in our community that didn't feel like this was something. So why do you think that was the case? And anybody that this is open.
I don't think this is an easy issue to talk about for everyone. Like it's really, really complicated. It's not black and white. It's a gray area. If you ask some women who are in the older generation, they'll say like women don't face any problems in the Coptic Church. And then other women will say something like adiha, like, yes, we face problems, but there's nothing you can do about it. It just goes back all the way to thousands of years ago and we can't change anything about it. And it's just how things are. So it's possible that there's a sense of like, you feel defeated. You feel like there's no point in talking about it because there's nothing you can do to change it.
Okay. And just to make it clear, because you referenced it sort of indirectly, and this was before the recording that we said, okay, here's kind of the topic at hand. What's the topic at hand? What's the thing that we're really going to be discussing and focusing on?
I mean, women's place in the community.
Church.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think it's important to outline that the goal is not to scandalize, right? The goal is not to say and complain and like we're leaving. Marsha's married to a priest. Angie is an active servant. Maggie has been an active servant for a long time. And her husband is probably like the most Coptic person I know. Don't tell him I said that. He's gonna get mad. He's gonna be like,
he'll take it as a huge compliment. Someone called him Mr. Coptic the other day.
Oh yeah. No, I remember, and I was just texting Maggie earlier today. I was like, I was here when Samar first came from Egypt. Like, I'm gonna make the joke anyway. He still had the tan line from his sailor's hat. So yeah, I remember. I was like, and I remember like as soon as he showed up, I was like, oh man, get this guy a jersey with a number. Like he's part of the team. So no, like we're not going anywhere. And I think, I've said this before, like if I had any questions about my commitment to the Coptic community, all of those questions disappeared in 2020. It's like, oh, we're going to share a spoon in a pandemic. Okay. No, that's not a deal breaker. That's not a deal breaker. I'll still be here. No problem. Like, a sex abuse crisis. Oh, okay. No, we can work through this. We can work through this. Are you crazy? Like, yeah, I think we can work through this. So I think, 2020 was a rough year in terms of like the objective, but in terms of the subjective, it was like a reinforcing, like, it was a reminder, like, no. Like, we love this community, we love the people, we love the faith, we love our relationship with God that we get through this community. We're not going anywhere. So when we talk about these things, we're bringing them up as, hey, have we considered that maybe women feel a little bit marginalized? Maybe they're not as encouraged. I don't know, just as a hypothetical. So
I think we equate criticism with just objective hate, but that's just patently not true. When someone criticizes an idea or an issue at hand, you're making remarks or commenting on something you care about, like you care enough about the issue that to like provide a commentary on it. And of course you have people that are just there to share opinions no one asked for, but when you are present, you're actually trying to bring up an issue because you want things to change for the better. There's nothing wrong with saying, like you said, like, hey, maybe let's think about this. Let's try and talk about it. There's nothing wrong with it.
So why do you think that is? And you can answer the question sort of in general, and this goes for all of you, not just Angie, like or specifically for our community. Like, why is pointing out an area of growth taken as hatred or an attack?
I think this dates back to the church's relationship in Egypt, because, and I think we were speaking with Hiba about this. Hiba was saying that, like, in Egypt, the church's relationship with the people is almost like that's who you are, that's your identity, and it's your safe haven from the predominantly Muslim oppression that you experience. So the church is very afraid of reputation, because there's this sense of like, well, if the Muslim Brotherhood finds out about the church's problems or the church's scandals or how the church is not as fair to women, it's going to somehow be the downfall of the church in Egypt. And I think that it just goes all the way back to that fear of like anything being wrong in our reputation is bad for the church because of where we are in Egypt, because we have so little in Egypt compared to the Muslims.
I think also there's this relationship with the word orthodox where we have this beautiful point of pride that our traditions come from an ancient, I don't know another word to use than tradition. Our traditions are the same. But then that translates into applying that label to everything that happens in our community. And that ends up being problematic when things bleed into the community from sources that are not inherently Coptic.
I just want to put a plug in for the conversation I had with Abuna Girgis, where, I mean, he just knocked that question out of the park. He was like, listen, there's some things that are never going to change. Like our faith, our belief in God, the Trinity, the sacraments, like we're not going to change any of these things. But then there's the details of how these things are done that we're probably going to keep, but we have to recognize as not essential elements of that faith. And then the real problem is when people are as committed to the details of the details. Like it's not the faith, like nobody's questioning the faith. And it's not even the details that we use to execute the faith. It's the details of the details. And I think that's to your point, Angie. Like I think orthodoxy and tradition, like the Orthodox tradition, like capital O, capital T, is not the same thing as don't cross your legs in church.
Yes, I think the theory of orthodoxy is not sexist. When you look at the church and like the regard for saints, the female saints, the regard that we have for the Virgin Mary and all the female saints and all the important people through history who were women. But then the practices and the attitudes in the parishes can be sexist and it's okay to talk about that. And also, you mentioned that you wanted to get an older woman. I would have loved to have somebody from my mom's generation in their 60s. And when I told my mom I was doing this, hey mom, she was like, you shouldn't do it. It was like a huge fear of being online. So I
Right.
don't know if there's maybe, I mean, just to go back to that, I don't know if there's like a generational fear, but then you've gotten wonderful gentlemen. I mean, Dr. Rafi and other folks in that generation. I loved listening to them. They have so much wisdom to give. And I would have loved to have, I even suggested a bunch of people to you that
Yeah.
I would have loved to have. That I said, these people be way better than
Yeah.
somebody who's 40, you know?
Exactly.
But there was a
And
fear.
yeah. And I love this group. Like this is such a special group, but I think we all agree like having that extra dimension would have rounded out the perspective. And one person that I spoke to gave me a really like interesting perspective that she said she wouldn't want to say. And I'm like, why not? She's like, because it wouldn't be well received. I'm like, how do you know that? How do you know that like there isn't like a majority of the people that agree with you that are afraid to say that?
Mhm.
And she was like, yeah, but that's not the new liberal agenda, because she was saying that her opinion is that the woman's place is in the home and taking care of the family. And I was like, you're entitled to that opinion. And I think she, being a very successful like career power player, like for someone like that to say to me like really like you're saying this, like there's a difference between someone who has focused their entire life on their family to say you should prioritize your family versus someone who's like the CEO of a Fortune 500 company saying your primary responsibility of your family. It's like, oh, like, so you can be the CEO of a Fortune 500
There's a,
company.
yeah, sorry.
So,
I
so,
was just gonna say there's a real tension between like the feminism that exists in society and what we see our role as being in the church and as servants, as moms, as wives, right? And I think the problem is that it's not like there's an idea of feminism out there that's like you've got to have a profession and having a profession is more important than taking care of your family, where that's so black and white, you know? And I remember Maggie and Mina talked about black and white and gray in their interview, and I love that. So I think it's very black and white. Like if you're going to have a profession, I have a full-time job, and you're going to take care of your family, you're going to be overwhelmed, right? It's not just like go be the CEO. You're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to need support. And those are the sort of like details that we don't talk about. And then the other thing is, I think that a lot of the older women, they see feminism as being something about like not just equal rights and equal pay and equal roles, but also they perceive that feminism is about like sexual freedom, right? And that's not really what I think about when I think about feminism and equality. If you're going to talk about like sexual freedom, for example, a woman who wants to have that is going to damage her emotions, her soul, because the freedom she seeks is within relationship with Jesus Christ, right? So if we're talking about like equality and rights, all of those things are important, but they have to be within a context of our relationship with the church and with God. So I think it's okay, right? Let's like say it's okay to talk about some of these things as long as we're talking about them within the context of our salvation.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I said, whether you join us or not, I'm going to bring up this question because I don't agree with this idea, right? I don't agree, oh, it's the woman's responsibility. I think, no, I think it's the parents, like both parents. And if it's just a single parent, then, that tells you like, okay, if it's a single dad or a single mom, someone still needs to be responsible for raising the kids, and someone still needs to be responsible for earning enough money for the house not to collapse. Now, how they decide to share those responsibilities doesn't matter, right? Like Abuna Dan, like is Mr. Mom. Like he's home and he's hanging out with the kids and like he's going crazy and like I'm talking to him and he's like, oh good, Marsha's home. like I can finally get a break. Like he's a priest. He's the you know the father of the not just the household but the community. But like, I mean, he spends time with his kids. Like that's a beautiful thing. So I don't know. Like I told her, I said, I don't agree with you, but I think it's important for you to say that and for people to hear that, wow, like this is an okay opinion to have, right? Like I want people to have that opinion, even though I don't agree with it. And I want people to hear that opinion that like, no, like there are people that are very successful, women, that think that women should prioritize their families and they think men that should prioritize their careers. Like, I don't think so, but that's a very important point, I think. I mean, how do you guys feel about that point? Like, is that an anti-feminist or is that a sort of a, you know, classic feminist or a nouveau feminist? Like, what's that position of saying that the women should focus on the family and the men should focus on earning a living?
Listen, I think when this question comes up, I always respond with every woman should have the right to have that be what they want, you know? Like if a woman decides that they want to be a housewife and a mother and that is their quote unquote full-time career, then thank God she has every right to put herself into that position. But if another woman says, no, I want to focus on my career, then okay, that should be totally fine too. But like, I think this idea of a family, you have a partner. When you get married, you become one in Christ. You have a responsibility to share. And it truly gets me upset when I see really unequal kind of power structures within a family where you see some moms in church, you got 2 kids on her hip and then 3 trailing back behind her, and you're like, where's the father? And you see him on the other side of the church standing by himself. I'm like, it really, like, it hurts seeing that, you know, like this, there should be this kind of equal contribution to keeping the family afloat and keeping that kind of relationship, you know, like it's an equal responsibility shared by 2 parents, not just the mother. But if that's, again, the question of the opinion itself, if a woman has that opinion, then okay, but don't try and impose that on a woman that doesn't have that opinion.
I was going to say that true feminism will succeed when that stops becoming a question. I think we don't ask that question about men. We don't say like, should he be in the home or should he not be in the home? I think that we spend a lot of time wondering what a woman should do. And I think there should be no right or wrong answer to that. It should just be, what does she individually want? Just like we ask men what they individually want. That's it. Like, that's all. To me, that true feminism will succeed when we stop asking whether or not a woman is supposed to do that and just say a woman is supposed to do whatever is right for her and her family.
Right.
And that's it.
Right. There's also an interesting socioeconomic aspect to this. So like when I was growing up, there were times where my mom worked 2 jobs out of necessity. Would she have liked to have been home? Yes. Could she? No. And so it's almost a luxury to talk about this, right? A lot of women don't even have that. And what about, there are a lot of single moms for one reason or another, divorce, death, whatever, separation. And I really feel for those moms. They're on 24/7, often working, often, like Angie said, having the kids at church, in both arms. And it is so hard. So I remember like when I would go to church with my 2, I have 3 kids, but when the older 2 were little and I had like one in each arm, And I remember other people coming and helping me. And I was like, that's a church. When you like see somebody struggling and you go and you help them, you don't give them a dirty look because their kids made noise in church. You don't
I hate
criticize them
that.
for showing up late.
I
You
hate
just
that.
help. And so like I want to do that. You know, like when my kids get older, I want to do that. I want to help those women. Right now I'm still like occupied with my little 5-year-old, but who's wild. But it is so important that we acknowledge, like, it's a whole thing what women go through in church, and men with their little ones, getting them ready, getting them there, trying to keep them quiet and engaged. It's heroic.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you bringing up that socioeconomic piece is really important too, because it's really a privilege to forget about that, you know, and it just reveals a whole other layer of the obstacles that Coptic women have to face, especially Coptic women who have just immigrated here, who don't speak English and don't have the opportunity to, like, I know some women who can't work. And so that position of being a stay-at-home mom while the husband is out there working 3 jobs out of necessity, it's imposed on them, where that might not be the dynamic had they had the choice. There's just a lot of elements in play here, and I think it's really important to note that.
And this is going to be a shameless plug, but I think it's still relevant. One of our business partners for Koinonia Ventures is a widow from Upper Egypt who was initially told, you're not allowed to work. And she had kids, and she went to her in-laws and said, okay, like, I don't know what to do with these kids. Like, your kids have school books and tutoring and all this stuff to help them succeed. Like, we're barely making it by on food, let alone like transportation to school and things like that. And they said, oh, don't worry, we'll give you money, you don't need to work. She was like, okay. And then they weren't giving her enough, and she was like, okay, like, I'm not getting enough, like, how do I get my kids to get what you're getting for your kids? And they said, yeah, well, you know, we're trying our best. And, you know, she got all these excuses. And eventually, you know, they relented, and she said, listen, like, either support my kids or let me work, but you can't tell me you're not allowed to work. You died when your husband died, and you sit at home and mourn and grieve because that's what is expected of you culturally. And then my kids in the meantime are suffering because of that. Like you got to do one or the other. Like, I'm happy to be a good girl and sit at home and do what I'm supposed to do, but, you know, like, what about them? And eventually they relented, and, you know, the rest is history. Like, she got a loan and she has a business, and now, like, you know, I think we have like a video of her posted on our website and on our YouTube, and I'm the one interviewing her. Like, you know, like, I'm not in the recording, but I can tell you, like, we got to a point in the recording where she hesitates as she's talking about if you invest yourself and you work and you make yourself concerned about other people's problems. So this is to your point, Marsha, about like looking around and saying, how do I help other people? Then you forget about your own problems, and your own problems become less relevant. And like, I started crying. Like, I'm talking to her, and I like started like visibly, and she stops and she hesitates. I'm just like, just keep going. Like, don't mind me. Just keep doing what you're doing. And it's such a powerful message. And if, you know, 50% of our demographic is told that no, you don't have something, then that doesn't just affect the people that they could serve, it affects them. So giving women a role to serve prominently, not in secret, as equal members, not as secondary citizens, benefits the community, but it also benefits the people that are given this gift of serving. And Irini, that's the name of the business partner. Irini is like, you know, the poster child for this, where nobody that I know in life had the odds stacked against them more than her. And like, I look at her, I'm like, I want to be like her, like that, like she's my role model. So how do we move past that? Like, how do we say, okay, we've recognized the issue, we've identified potential reasons for why that might be the case, but now what do we do?
Mina, you just like brought up so much stuff that I want to talk about. First, you reminded me of when Marsha told me that to be a true Christian is to be a servant. You can't be a Christian without being a servant, okay? The second thing you made me think about was the fact that Coptic women, Egyptian women are made to feel like their life begins when they get married. Okay. Yes, Angie, that's for you. Okay. Because we've talked about this many times before. And the last thing is just the fact that like, there's a certain kind of Coptic woman that's allowed to lead and in a certain way. And until we acknowledge that kind, we're never going to move past it. And I just know this by looking at people who are in leadership positions within the church. You're allowed to lead if you're not too loud. You're allowed to lead if you have an advanced degree. You're allowed to lead if, you know, you have several good relationships with people in church and you've never made anyone upset or mad or disagreed with anyone. And I just feel like until we acknowledge that those are arbitrary limitations that we have imposed on ourselves because of cultural biases, we're never going to move past a place of anyone can lead, anyone, not just a man and not just a woman who fits these ideals. And I just think that that's really important.
What about you're allowed to lead if you're a priest's wife, which is so wrong.
You know, I mean, like, you're a really good leader, though.
Make that woman head of Sunday school. She's married to a priest. What? No, yep. That does not qualify you. So add it as a fourth point to like advance degree. And you haven't upset people. Yeah, there's that too.
So Angie, did you know that? Did you know that your life starts after marriage? Like all of this is just sort of just making you a better candidate for marriage. Did you realize that?
Yeah, you know what? This actually makes a lot more sense now. It puts my life into perspective because I've been pretty stagnant until now, and it's because I don't have a man in my life.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize I was applying to all of these PhD programs so that he would feel like I would be worth talking to. Now, okay. I need to call.
It's just, it's 6 years of training to know how to talk to a man. It's
no, not to know how to talk to a man, to make you worth talking to. Right? Because, like if you didn't have a PhD and he's an MD, then, I mean, I guess he can go like beneath his status to talk to you. But now that you have a PhD, yeah. I mean, she's not a real doctor, but it's something. It's something. Right? I mean, like this is not
hitting something really hard right there.
Right? But this is not crazy. This is not like completely like no, I've never heard that, or no, people don't think that. Like I'm saying it. I think it's ridiculous, but it's not something that's foreign to us.
Right. It's not just that women become more prized when they're married for some reason, but also you get married and then you have to have a child. You know, there's so much pressure, and I don't know where these values came from.
I mean, I've made this joke before,
a story.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, I just remember a story of a friend who got married, and maybe like a year into the marriage, she's standing in the line for communion, and a tunt comes to her and asks her whether she's pregnant, and she's like, no, and even if I was, that's not your business. And this tunt then proceeds to tell her like like these superstitions on how to get pregnant. And she told me it was the most uncomfortable position she had ever been in, ever in church. And the fact that it just happened in communion line is, I feel like, a good summary of kind of what we're talking about right now.
I think it's very clear that if you are waiting to have children or decide not to have children, you're considered not fulfilling that duty as a woman. And it's, there is like such a pressure on us from a very young age to make ourselves as like physically presentable and like mild mannered and like ra'iya as possible, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to capture a man. And there's like all these tricks that we're taught. Like honestly, I consider it a quiet revolution that I showed up to this interview with my curly hair, because when I was growing up, it was very much like, you need to straighten your hair always. You need to become like ra'iya and quiet and like don't laugh too loudly and all these things. And then honestly, I just want to tell you, after getting married, like no one cares, because you fulfilled that obligation in that role. And the fact that I waited like a year and a half to 2 years to have my first child, I know of people who told me that I was committing a sin against God because I wanted to wait to have children. Like literally, I'm committing a sin against God by not making children right away. I just think that all these things, we don't discuss them. They're just considered a part of the status quo. And I think all of these tiny little violences against women's autonomy are not, they're not going to go away unless we make an active effort to make them realized and show the ramifications of them.
Yes. And along those lines, something that breaks my heart is when I know a woman who is trying to have a baby, has dealt with miscarriage or loss. And I hear people at church saying, when are you going to have your next child? Or when are you going to have a child? And I know what's going on with that woman. That just breaks my heart, because they're suffering inside and they just have to, like Maggie said, just like put on a smile and giggle and move on, I guess. There's so much.
I wish they could just say it, but we don't have an environment that's safe to say it. You know, like Meghan Markle just wrote an article in the New York Times about her miscarriage, and like women are praising her and like glorifying her for talking about it. And I was too. I was super inspired by her. But we don't have a culture that's like, I had a miscarriage, yes, and just saying that out loud. And you know, any kind of matter that's considered like it ruins the ideal picture of like your perfect family. You know, I just, again, just tying back to reputation.
Or I have, somebody who has postpartum depression or just depression or any of those things.
I was just about to say that I think it also ties into this deep need for mental health initiatives and advocacy within the community, because a lot of this goes back to, first of all, how we teach young girls how to feel good about themselves and having self-esteem, and not obsessing over whether or not their hair is curly or not, when that's just the genetics that God gave them. And then it's just every step of your life, there's a magnifying glass put on you. And there's a lack of awareness and knowledge of how to deal with that. And, I think this is something that is getting recognized at this present time. Just talking about mental health in all parts of society, not just the Coptic community, is something that's relatively new and something that's kind of been ramping up over the past couple of years. But I think that hand in hand, talking about a woman's place in the church and talking about how we can support people on just an emotional and human level, they're inescapable from each other. They're inherently tied to one another. And I think it goes back to Marsha's point before of like looking at people in church and asking yourself, how can I help them? Instead of like, let me be nosy and ask about this person's miscarriage. Like it's I don't know. It's just, we have to start asking ourselves, what is my intention in approaching this person and asking this question? it goes back to self-awareness ultimately.
You know, I was reading this book, More Than a Body, by Dr. Lindsay Kite and Lexi Kite, and they have their PhD in media literacy and body image. And I'm really, really interested in this topic. Their whole mantra is like, your body is an instrument, not an ornament. And they have this chapter about how women are perceived as threats by other women when they're considered more objectively attractive. And I was reading the study that they did, and it said that like 35 or 40% of women are considered like less friendly and less consumable by other females when they're considered more objectively attractive. And it just made me think about like conversations I had growing up with other women in our community where a woman was judged because like lebsadaya, okay? She's like wearing clothes that are not considered like church appropriate clothes. Well, why do you think she's wearing those clothes? She's probably wearing those clothes because she feels like her only value is coming from being an ornament and not an instrument. So instead of looking at a woman in church and thinking to yourself, oh, she's like trying to like ibzdaya, and like, where does she think she's going? She's going to the club. Think about where her value comes from. If her value comes from going to church and being like, you know, people are in awe of her beauty, then like, you know, maybe the problem is not what she's wearing. Maybe the problem is the fact that she's not getting her value from anywhere else. When she goes to church, she feels like her only value comes from how she looks, rather than her mind, rather than her brain, rather than her motherhood, rather than her job. It's just, how do you look?
I think that also ties back to like kind of bringing it back to the question of women's positions in the church. There's a lack of service that we are allowed to partake in. And so when a young girl goes to church and she gets admonished for singing along with him, she learns that she is not allowed to participate in certain parts of liturgy. She is not allowed to participate in going to church. So this value where like she might have once held a value of being a part of a community, she then starts placing her value on like, okay, well, if I can't be a part of like the tradition, then I'm going to try and look for my value somewhere else. So we need to be so careful in how we talk to little kids in general, but specifically young girls, because they're so they remember the things that are told to them and the experiences that they take and internalize, and it can really change how they experience the church and how they view the church later on. Like we always talk about like, okay, why is this teenage girl not going to church anymore? Well, yeah.
We actually have, I mean, I think I want to start by saying we're all one church, whether I'm in California and you guys are in New England, but in our diocese, we have an ecclesiastical choir, which is women, girls who have, I mean, they have white robes, they stand in the front, they sing hymns, and they serve in the church. It would be great if that was everywhere. I think it's wonderful because, like, even I go to hymns class with my boys. I have 3 boys, and I'm for the first time learning some of the hymns. It like occurred to me that I don't know a lot of hymns. I don't know a lot of Coptic because maybe that wasn't really, I don't know if my parents didn't take me to hymns class or what it was growing up, but now I'm getting into it and I love it. And interestingly, we were being taught Coptic for a while by a woman, Tassoni Ines. She's from San Diego. She would drive an hour to our church and teach us Coptic. But, you know, back to what Angie said, if a young girl or woman teenager is going to church and not seeing herself having a position, that's going to affect them long term.
Yeah, and you just reminded me of like, so I'm really blessed to have had parents who, when it came to spiritual matters, gender didn't matter. My aunt is a nun, and she's a nun at St. Philippeteer's convent in Old Cairo, and her mother superior was Tamavarini, and like Tamavarini is like was my role model, is my role model when I was growing up, and still is. So I had a female spiritual role model growing up, and for those of you who know me, you know, I'm quite competitive, and I have this kind of challenging spirit. So when I was growing up, there was a time where I taught myself Coptic out of spite, which is not the greatest excuse to do so. But I can't remember who said it. And honestly, it's probably a blessing that God granted me that I forgot who said it, but they challenged me to learn Coptic and show people that I could know hymns. And so I grew up, thank God, having this ability to read Coptic and kind of thirst for wanting to learn hymns. And so in high school, I was a hymns teacher for middle school and elementary school. And I remember this incident where I was teaching my middle schoolers, and you know how when you teach a mixed class, all the girls kind of segregate themselves to one side and the boys sit on one side. And to like spice things up, they wanted to do kind of like a battle between the genders. And so we did it where I had the boys sing and I had the girls sing, and the girls were like quiet, you know, they kind of mumble along. I'm like, don't be afraid, even if you make a mistake, it's okay, we're here to learn, we can fix it. So I tried to encourage them to sing louder and louder. They still felt a little too shy, and there was a boy who spoke up and he was like, see, girls can't learn Coptic. I was like, I want you to think about what you just said, because first of all, I'm your teacher, and last I checked, I'm a girl. Second of all, think about how you made your fellow classmates and your sisters in Christ feel by saying that. You're putting them down when they're trying to learn. And it broke my heart, because the next time we had hymns class, I didn't see them. The girls didn't show up. And I made that kid go and individually apologize to them. It was actually my brother. I was ranting about it on my way home, and my brother was in the car with me. That boy was my brother's friend. My brother went to him and was like, you messed up. You should say sorry. So the boy came and apologized to me. I made the boy apologize to them. But it's these little things that, like, the representation is not there. So we need to really encourage girls to enter service and think about how to retain those girls in service. Like it reminds me of these diversity initiatives that happen at universities, where they're just like, hey, we need more people of color. We just like bring everyone with a little bit of melanin in their skin, just bring them all onto campus. But then there's nothing in place. There are no structures in place to help retain those students, to support them from their varied experiences of life. They're just like, okay, you can come in, you do whatever, hopefully you give us your tuition money. That's not, you can't expect service, or you can't expect something without knowing that you need to support these people as well. There's a give and a take in service, where I, as a servant, am giving my time and my love for the church and these kids. And I don't want to say that you're trying to do like I'm doing service in return for something, because at the heart of it, that's not what service is about. But it would be nice to not feel completely like forgotten and thrown away by the end of my service. You know what I mean?
So I think we're clear that, you know, there are systems changes that need to happen, right? Where encouraging women and encouraging our young ladies and our young men and enlisting them, right, Mr. Paul, you're gonna be part of the solution. Paul, are you gonna be part of the solution?
He was on mute, sorry.
So, is he gonna be part of the solution?
No.
No.
He's honest.
He's
like
real.
He's real.
We'll work on it. We'll work on it.
Like, I'm not going to be part of the problem, but, you know, I'm also really indifferent to whatever you guys are saying. So yeah, maybe all these systems level things need to be addressed, but in the meantime, right, like while we continue to advocate for these things and saying, listen, like, why can't they sing? like give me a reason why they can't sing. Like the function of the reader is as a teacher, right? Like the ognostos is ordained as a teacher in the church. Like most of the Sunday school teachers are women. So the lower ranks of the diaconate, the psalter and the reader, like those roles as they function within the church responsibilities, those functions are served by women. Like they're allowed to sing. They should be encouraged to sing because it's congregation responses, not altar responses. So everyone should be participating in them. And like the cat's out of the bag. You can't tell them don't teach. like unless most of your Sunday school workforce not to teach. So I think those things are clear. But in the meantime, and this is the point of our conversation where I must ask you something. What do you want to tell FIFA? So she's been listening.
Hi, FIFA.
What do you guys tell her on, and she's obviously going to speak up and respond because she's got a lot to say. But what do we tell her? Like this church, this church is for you because, like, we want you to be active in this community because. Why?
Well, related to that, I would say, hey FIFA, good to see you. As you're figuring out things in life about the church and about being a girl in the church, I would tell you to look back to the Bible and to look back to the stories of the saints and to really learn from that instead of to take people's opinions at church. That's one thing I would say.
I just have nothing more to say other than you are enough and you matter. You are enough and you matter. And don't worry about what people think of you. People are going to make you feel like that's the thing that matters most. It's not. It's like the least important. What matters the most is God's opinion of you. I want to say your parents' opinion of you, but your parents' opinion of you is equivalent or less important than your opinion of you. So I think at the end of the day, that's what matters.
I think I would say that you should remind yourself that you were made in God's image, just as everyone else, and that you are special, and that you have every right to occupy the space that you are in, regardless of what people may say to you. That, you know, you being here and being a part of this church is not a mistake, you know? Like God knew you were going to be there. God wanted you to be there. And, you know, who is to go against God, you know? So like Maggie and Marsha said, don't take a person's opinion and put that above that, put it above what is in the Bible and put it above God, you know?
And also, FIFA.
Go ahead, Marsha.
You have your mom and dad who are wonderful, and you are so lucky to have them because they really are amazing parents.
They are.
But in addition, if you want, you have a spiritual father who you confess to and get advice from, but you can also have a spiritual mother, somebody who's not your mom or dad, who you can go to for advice. And I think that we don't talk about spiritual mothers enough. And also spiritual friends. I mean, let's make a new category, spiritual friends. Spiritual mothers are usually somebody who are older than you, doesn't have to be, but usually older than you, who you can go to for advice at any time. And like one of the people in my life who I consider a spiritual mother is actually, you're younger than me, but I always go to her for advice and feedback. And it's a little easier sometimes than talking to my father of confession, who is really busy because he's a priest, right? So I wanted to tell you to think about having a spiritual mother. There's a lot of wonderful women in your life who I know who would be great spiritual mothers, and you can talk that over with your parents. And another thing is that God made everybody with talents, and you have a talent that other people don't have. And it took me a long time to figure out what my talents are. And I think you should think about what your talents are and also think about how you want to get better at them and then how you might want to serve in the church with them or serve in the community with them. For example, Maggie's a teacher, so she helps a lot of people in that way, right? Some people are doctors. Some people serve the church by doing things like, I mean, I have a friend who always cleans the church. So that's how she serves the church. There's so many jobs in church, and none of them are less important than the other. It's not like if you clean the church, it's not as good as teaching in the church, right? They're all important roles, but find what you love and what you enjoy, and you can do it. If you love arts and crafts, you can do that with your little brother or the kids at church. Or if you love singing, you should sing loud. You know, if you love Coptic, you should learn it. Any of those things.
Don't let anyone stop you from learning Coptic.
And your dad is a great teacher, but I can think of a lot of things that you might enjoy doing at church as you grow up in the church and get older. And I think you'll enjoy church a lot if you find something that you love doing there.
I just want to say for like singing. So most of the when I did hymns class, I don't do it anymore because I don't really know why. But so most of the girls would not really sing that loud. But I would basically be the only one that would sing loud. Except for my cousin Julie. Sometimes she would.
So why do you think that's the case?
So I'm kind of the kind of person that's kind of out loud, things that are kind of sensitive. And some girls are kind of sensitive with a lot of stuff.
What do you think they're sensitive about? What do you think they're thinking when they're, maybe they want to sing loud, but maybe they don't. What do you think the reason is?
Well, sometimes when I'm loud, I kind of get embarrassed. So maybe they're getting embarrassed when it's
loud. Yeah. Is there a way that we can encourage them? And you remember, we tried to get the girls to stand up front, and we got them the head coverings. And we said, okay, now you can stand in the first row. And a lot of girls were like, nope, I don't want to stand in the first row. And that's for the deacons. And we said, yeah, but you're allowed to sing, and you're allowed to sing with the deacons, and we want you to do that. And a lot of them said, no, I don't want to do that. What is the reason, you think?
Well, actually, I didn't really want to do it either.
Yeah, so what's the reason?
I'd rather be singing in the back.
Okay.
I would sing loud, but I wouldn't want to sing in the front.
Okay. What if it was just the normal thing? Yeah, the boys sing, but the girls sing also, and it wasn't what if it wasn't a weird thing that was a change, but it's just the way that we've always done it. The girls always sing in the front with the boys. Would that make it more normal and make it more likely that you're going to participate in it?
Yeah.
Instead of your crazy dad being no, you have to sing with the boys. Come sing with the boys.
But yeah, I would do it, but it's just some girls, they stand in the front, but they just don't sing. Like they just want to be in the front without singing.
So how can we get that to be like the normal thing, right? Where it's not like weird for the girls to stand on the front, but it's like, okay, like, yeah, of course they stand there. They've always stood in the front, right? How do we get to that point?
Maybe if, like maybe for maybe like a week, it was required to stand in the front so that they would get used to it, and then they would want to stand in.
So we'd have to make it a requirement. Like you're gonna get in trouble if you don't stand there.
No, not like getting like like maybe like if you well, for me, if I had to stand in the front, I would do it. And then once I've had to stand in the front for maybe like 3 times or something, then it would feel normal to me if everybody else was doing it. So if everybody else was doing it, then if it was a requirement, then everybody would be there, and then it would feel normal after a while. So
Interesting. Okay, so like a required service, not getting in trouble, but still like required. Like we have to make it required. That's an interesting perspective. So, Marsha, where's your husband?
He's at church.
Okay. So we scheduled like a renegade a mustache where it's like, okay, the kids may or may not burn the house down.
But they're good now.
Okay.
Sorry about that. You know, FIFA, I think if you were encouraged, you don't want to be forced and you want to get in trouble, but you want to be encouraged to sit in the front. So everyone should contribute to that encouragement.
Is that a better word than required?
yeah,
So how do we encourage without requiring?
maybe well, for the requirement, I wasn't thinking like you'd get in trouble. Like maybe they could close down like the back rows where people just sit down waiting for church to be over.
What was it? I didn't hear.
She goes, maybe you can close down the back rows where people sit just waiting for church to be over.
FIFA, that's a good observation. You know that there are people sitting in the back just waiting for church to be over.
Some like moms sit in the back so that the kids like wouldn't disturb people, but some just sit in the like,
you're totally right.
It's amazing to me when, and she's done this since she was like 3 or 4 years old, where she'll pick up on things. I'm like, you notice that?
FIFA, you're more observant than a lot of adults. You notice more things than a lot of adults.
I only notice it because like the people who sit in the back, basically half of the time at church, they're on their phones.
That's another observation. And so this comes back to participation in the community. You know, everyone should sing, young and old, female and male, girls and boys, everyone should sing. We're all part of the body of Christ. Everyone should participate, and everyone should put their phone away unless it's an emergency. PSA.
Or you're using Coptic Reader.
So FIFA, what grade are you in now? 4th grade.
Amazing.
So when did that also come up in our conversation earlier? When Marsha said that she was Maggie's 4th grade Sunday school teacher. Mm-hmm. So Tante Marsha was Tante Maggie's Sunday school teacher when Tante Maggie was in 4th grade, like you. And Tante Marsha is my age. Like she grew up with mommy, and Tante Marsha and I have known each other for 20 years now. You know that? 20.
Amazing.
20.
Maybe more. Maybe like 21. Yeah.
Well, I moved to Boston in 2001, so it was summer of 2001.
When my brother was born.
بس انتي حدش كلمك انتي خالص. بنتكلم مع Marsha, who was the Sunday school teacher for Maggie, and nobody said Angie at all. So
my bad.
Angie's credit, like, I don't know how old Angie is, but what a wise soul,
Thank you.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Thank
Like,
you.
you have observations. I'm gonna guess how old, about how old you are, that I didn't have when I was your age.
Yes, I agree. Angie has taught me things even though I'm older than her.
Mhm.
And
I'm 24 for reference.
I've said this before, that Sophia terrifies me because she's picking up on things. I'm like, I definitely didn't think that you would figure that out. And Angie's the same way. Like, they have, and I call them both savages. Like, they're like, it's savage. Like, it's absolutely savage. Like, they'll just come out and be like, like, blah, 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 this very like obvious observation. I'm like, no.
I call
Like,
that hyper awareness.
oh, it's, I mean,
Hyper awareness.
yeah. So I think that looking at things from that perspective, where Maggie now is someone that I look to for leadership, right? I look to Maggie and say, okay, I call her boss and I say, what are we doing, boss? Like, I say, take the lead, and whatever you say, we're going to support. And Maggie was this age when Marsha was her teacher, and now it's no longer this like, oh, I'm your teacher. It's like, no, like, we've
She's still my
raised.
teacher. She's still my
No.
teacher.
But,
Let's
but
not.
Maggie,
Let's be real.
you had me read Pedagogy of the Oppressed, right? And
It's an amazing
Pedagogy
book.
of the Oppressed, it's not about who's the teacher. It's no,
Right.
like, we're
Mhm.
we're all teachers and we're all students. We're all trying to learn together. And like, yeah, maybe some of us are further along, asking the same questions and struggling with the same problems. But having Sophia, join us, and for her to be a fellow thinker, right? How do you help us solve this issue, right? Oh, well, make it required. Like, oh, we thought that would be a little heavy-handed. Like, we'll use the word encouraged, but really, like, making a requirement. Like, you have to stand there. Like, that's not a bad suggestion, right? For us to make it that this is the new norm requires to look at it from all angles. And eventually, it's not a fourth grader, having these opinions. It's a fourth grader that's now grown up to be a PhD candidate.
Not
It's
yet.
will be
Let's wait.
Soon.
We'll wait. God willing.
or a
Soon.
fourth grader that is the boss of bosses, like Maggie, or a Sunday school teacher that can say, along with me, I've benefited from learning from these fourth graders and watch them grow up, and we benefit from that co-learning that happens.
And
And I think,
sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
To go back to something Angie said, she said that she was teaching a hymns class and one of the boys made a comment about the girls singing. If that boy had the attitude, if his parents, if his community had the attitude of like, we're always learning, we're always teaching, then those comments and that attitude will diminish. If we can, maybe that's one of the takeaways here. If we can have that co-learner, co-teacher attitude, that we will move forward in making the church a welcoming and accepting and a wonderful place for all of our youth. Because it's not just the girls who suffer when we're not thinking about these issues, the boys are suffering too.
Mhm.
And that's a whole other conversation that we could have too, just the negative impacts of just sexist attitudes that impact the development and growth of boys. Like, there's a whole host of issues that can arise from it. And I know that we're winding down, so that could be maybe another session that we hold.
No, but like, you're 100% right, because I can tell you, like, I had a similar scenario where I found out that one of the boys said to the girls, oh, we're better than you because we can be deacons and you can't. And I lost it. Like, I spent the first half of the hymns class tearing them apart, saying, you can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And I gave them the whole like breakdown of like the church structure and the role of the chanters and the role of the readers. And, you know, like, who do you think you are? And like, this is a privilege and that privilege can be taken away from you. And to your point now, those same boys that say that to the girls say that to each other, right? I'm better than you because this is not service. Like, this is not service. Like, we should be looking to each other and saying, you're better than me because,
Yes.
right? How can we lift up the other person and say, you're better than me, not I'm better than you? Like, that's a pervasive attitude that the elitism that's rooted in sexism
Yes.
is not surprising. Like what did you think was going to happen? You told them, oh, you're so great because you know us possessed it. Like, okay, like, what does learning a hymn have anything to do with, you know, your moral justification, like in front of God or in front of others or what have you? Like, none of that.
The minute you put more importance on a title that you have rather than the community that you're a part of, and you forget the fact that we are a church instead of a bunch of broken down hierarchies, that's when you've lost the true essence of what we're here for.
So you said that like that one of the people in this class said.
Can you speak up, FIFA?
Speak up,
Sorry.
FIFA.
So
Don't be afraid to be loud.
Yeah,
Yeah.
be loud.
So you said that like one of the boys in the first class said, "I'm better than you because I'm a deacon and you're not, and you can't be." Well, so in class we were supposed to like, write something about what kindness actually means, and I said like kindness is like you do it so that others can be happy, not so that you get a reward.
Wow.
That's a
And-
really good point.
And kindness is one of the things that should be at the center of any service, as a deacon or as a Sunday school teacher or as like, you know, any service, like inside or outside of the church. Kindness should be an essential element of that, right?
Doing it with love. Yes. That's a great.
That's awesome, FIFA.
I want that tattooed on me. I'm just kidding, Mama. No, I'm kidding.
Oh yeah, because if you get a tattoo, you can't be in a Coptic. No, wait, you can. Oh, because if you get a tattoo, you can. Wait, no, actually, it has no consequences. Oh wait, you're gonna get a lecture. You're just trying to avoid the lecture. But I have no tattoos. Like, for me, it's not even that I want one or don't want one. Like, I'm like, oh, that would be cool. And then like 5 minutes later, oh, you know what else would be cool? And it's like, I'm not committed to any of these things, and tattoos are permanent. like I
Maybe we should get it. Let's get that quote on a shirt.
Yeah,
Maggie
like,
can-
it's fine. I always said that if they made tattoos that you could change, where it's like, oh, sometimes it looks like this and sometimes it's that, like that, then I would be down with it. But I'm like, oh, like permanent, like that's the like no, like there's no way. It would drive me crazy. Like even if I got like a cross on my wrist, I'd be like, man, I wish the edges were just a little bit more clear. And that's it. Like,
that's what happened. Yeah, that happened.
like you got the tattoo, that's it, it's final. I'm like, no, I don't believe in things being final. It needs to be evolving. So speaking of which, hopefully the current state of how we treat these young ladies in our community is not permanent. Hopefully that's not tattooed on our cultural milieu, if you will.
Wow.
And I think we have a lot of work to do. And I hope that this is the beginning or a continuation of that conversation. Do you guys have any reflections or final thoughts?
This was so fun.
FIFA, I want to be you when I grow up.
She's a force to be reckoned with. Like, she absolutely terrifies me. Like, I'm like, God,
As she should.
She does. I'm like, I just hope you use your forces for good and not for evil. Like, just please, like, just be kind, be nice, be thoughtful, do things for the sake of other people. Because when you take over the world, I hope I hope it's for the sake of the good
Look
things.
at her.
That face says otherwise. She has big plans.
It could go either way. Like at this point, like she's still 10 years old, so you know, I hope she doesn't like, but like there's still, you know, plenty of time and plenty of real estate. Hey, aren't you married to him? Which one are you married to? His older brother?
For the conversation we had, Nina?
No.
Serious?
No, Buddha Dan married them at the beach.
Okay, we were once at the beach, and you don't remember this, and maybe this is just too much, but FIFA and Timmy were holding hands, and we took a picture of it, and Abu was just saying, I don't know, there was like some. Anyway.
Yeah, Abu Dan like came up behind them, and he put his hands one on one head and one on the other, and he looks at me and he goes, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely, done."
FIFA, you can marry whoever you want, and
Or not get married if you don't want to.
It's up to you, friend.
Whatever you want.
Wait, that.
You're also 10.
That
Don't worry about it.
I just want you to know.
fake married. You got fake married to Timmy, who now is hiding. Timmy, come say hi to your wife. What, am I not allowed to say that?
No.
No? Oh, did I cross a line that I said I wasn't?
Okay,
Mina, move on, Mina.
Move on. It's okay.
Oh
Move
no.
on.
You think moving on is the way? No.
Move on, Mina, move on.
You guys should see what happens when like something awkward happens at like a restaurant, like with a waitress or something, or like a waiter, and everybody's like, "Oh God," and I lean in and I'm like, that was pretty awkward, huh?
I don't know if you should be leaning in. You're making kids uncomfortable. Let's just.
Sophia, am I making you
Move
uncomfortable?
on.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure.
So,
There's no recovering from this.
My policy with my kids is, listen, like, let's just be open and transparent and honest. And if we're uncomfortable, we say, yeah, we're uncomfortable. Okay, meshi. Like, it's not the first time or the last time.
I would have been horrified if somebody said something about me being married. I'm just saying.
You're not, are you really married?
No.
No. Is your dad a crazy person?
Yes.
Yes.
that was perfect.
I don't think she's confused. Like she's thinking what Maggie's thinking. Like, okay, like, khalas, like fine, yeah. But she's gonna go and she's gonna go tell her brothers, like, oh, guess what your dad just did, right?
Maybe I will. Yeah, I won't.
I get that look all the time. So where were we before Timmy crashed the party? And any final thoughts, I was asking?
I'm proud of you, FIFA. It takes a strong person to live with your dad, so just keep going.
Look at that look I'm getting.
To do this interview.
And do this interview.
Oh, she was so mad when Jacob was asked. She's like, "What about me?" I'm like, "You're not invited." She's like, "Why not?" I'm like, "Because you're just not." Like I'm gonna have a conversation with Jacob and Uncle Rafit and Uncle Ray, and it just doesn't concern you. She's like, "Well, I want to be on it." I'm like, "We'll see." So here we are.
Did you like this interview? Was there anything you would want changed, or did you want to talk about something else?
Only thing changed was
I didn't hear that. What?
He goes, the only thing I wish didn't happen is Timmy coming in, so that I don't know. I don't know if you saw her like give me because this guy. Like if you're watching this, rewind and watch her elbow kind of go like. Oh.
Well, thank you for your thoughts, FIFA. That was. Listen, someone could go for a PhD and still wouldn't be as observant as you.
I just try to listen to everything.
He listens to everything.
That should be a rule for everyone.
No, but she listens to the layers. Like she hears this, and then she hears like everything that's happening underneath, and she'll give you like this like very critical analysis of like everything that's happening. It's
That's such a cool skill. I wish I had. That's really cool.
She's always been like that.
It doesn't happen.
What did she say?
It doesn't happen for school, unfortunately.
Happens
That's
to what
where it
matters.
stops.
All right, team. Well, thank you guys very much. You guys are rock stars. I am in awe of all of you, including this one. And you guys keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Mina.
Thank you, Mina.
Thank you.
Thank you, FIFA.